Against JMU's physical and scrappy defense, Dante Moore must play like a first-round quarterback.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering the favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. I'm an NFL draft analyst with Bleach Report. That's my guy, Keith Sanchez. He's the director of scouting with the Draft Network and 2019 national champion with the LSU Tigers. And as always, thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. It's time to preview the matchup in the college football playoffs. JMU versus Oregon. Get into the offensive prospects to watch, the defensive prospects to watch, and then those key matchups that can determine this game. But before we get into that, today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. JMU offensive prospects versus this Oregon team and their Oregon prospects. I'm going to start, of course, with our guy, Dante Moore. I think with Dante Moore, he's the big fish out of all the prospects in this game because, like I said, I think when you talked about it off air, it's been a lot of rumblings that he is actually considering entering the 2026 NFL draft. And I think this is a game that will, against an opponent that most people will view as inferior. We'll get into the defensive side and why I think people need to be on the alert a little bit when it comes down to it. But this is a game for him to just go out here and play well, right? Like orchestrate this offense, make timely reads and throws, use his legs when it needs to. I don't think you just style and profile this game and try and, get the style points and things of that nature. I think that's when you get yourself in trouble, messing around trying to, what was it? When the Rams lost to the Panthers, you could, if you watch that game, you would see that Sean McVay was trying to get the MVP from Matthew Stafford. They were up, they kept throwing instead of running the ball, and he ended up with 3 or 4 turnovers, and they lost that game. You don't need to do all that. For me, with Dante Moore, just be the smooth operator you've been all season, right? Like make the checks at the line of scrimmage you need to make, get your team into the right play calls, make the impact plays, get out of there with a win. You know what I mean? Score points, let your defense do their job. Get out of there unscathed. Don't do too much in this game.
Yeah, no, I agree, right? Just take what's there, right? This is the prototype game, and this isn't you don't want to end up forcing things to saying, okay, cool, we're playing JMU the first round. I should leave out of here with 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, right? Let the game come to you. If it ends up being that way because of how JMU plays, then so be it. But if you end up 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, take it, right? You want to get to the next round. The biggest thing is getting the win because you don't want to be on the side of the upset, right? Like you don't want that to be a part of your name.
Or don't let them linger. You don't want to make the mistakes that they linger into the fourth quarter and it's a 1-score game and it's anybody's game middle of the fourth quarter. You don't want that situation.
Yeah, 100%. DP, I'm going to go with tight end Kenyon Sadiq. Because as much Oregon had a couple prime time-ish games, right? Penn State was definitely one. And I'm trying to think if they faced USC, right? They played USC. That was the midday one. But I still think for this young man, Kenyon Sadiq, I don't think he's discussed enough as far as potentially one of the top 10 prospects in this entire draft, right? And as excited as we were for the guys last year, Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, even I feel as though in the draft space / overall college football space, Harold Fannin, right, got a good deal of conversation, especially early on in the season compared to what Kenyon Sadiq is getting. So I'm looking at this from a perspective of going against JMU. He's a superior tight end athlete, right? Like that's how we feel about him. So JMU shouldn't have a linebacker or a safety that can cover him. There probably isn't a combination where they can double him and still cover him, right? So I'm looking at Kenyon Sadiq, and we just came off of talking about Dante Moore and taking the easy things, right? So that's throwing in the middle of the field. That's taking your big body target, right? That's taking your biggest separation as far as mismatch, right? And getting him the football. So I'm looking at Kenyon Sadiq as as a key prospect to definitely watch in this game, because he have one of those 8 catches, 130 yards, and 2 touchdown-ish type football games.
Yeah, Keith, my sentiment about what we said about Dante Moore, hey, don't press, let it come to you. For Sadiq, it's a total different thing. Go out here and dominate. I want to see you dominate this matchup. Like you said, if they put a linebacker on you, win that matchup every single time. You know what I mean? Run block your butt off when it's time to run the ball with Noah Whittington, who's another player to watch in this game. If for those looking for running backs later on in the draft, Noah Whittington, I think my comp for him was Kyle. Was it Kyle Malunga? Because there's 2 running backs to just watch. No, his is Ray Davis. That's my comp for him when I did his report. Ray Davis, who's with the Buffalo Bills out of Kentucky. And then it was Kalen Black from Indiana, who reminded me a lot of Kyle Manunga. So, like, you look at Noah Whittington, quick-footed mover, agile, patient, good vision, low center of gravity, that kind of bowling ball, fire hydrant build. But he also is a former wide receiver in high school who can run routes to catch the ball out of the backfield. They just don't use him enough in that regard. But I would like to see them kind of, especially knowing that, hey, we win this game, we got to face Texas Tech, and they have a pass rush that I don't want Dante Moore holding the ball forever against. I want to start implementing other things to get the ball out of his hands quickly. This could be the game to deploy Noah Whittington a little bit. On the JMU side, Keith, they have their quarterback, Alonza Barnett III, 6 foot, 220-pound quarterback. And I mean, he's going to run the rock. He's going to run the ball. He's an improviser, a scrambler. He's a guy that he kind of lives and thrives off of the backyard football type of style. And that's why I said you can't let them linger, because the longer you let them linger, the more confidence grows. And he'll throw the football, but he's kind of a dual threat type of guy. You let them linger into the second half where they feel like, hey, we still have a chance in this game. They're going to throw everything at you plus the kitchen sink. They're going to throw the entire house at your defense to try and make sure that they can score and stay within striking range. So definitely look out for those watching this game. Keep an eye on Alonza Barnett III, the starting quarterback for JMU. He's a solid player. He's not going to check the measurement boxes for a lot of teams at 6 foot 220 and with a solid play, but definitely could be a guy that can have an impact in this game.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, DP. And to your running the football conversation, right, for Alonzo Barnett, if I counted right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He has 7 games where he rushed for double digits, right? Just to put that into context and to go back to it, 7 games where he rushed over for double-digit rushes, right? Carries, and then he has 14 rushing touchdowns. So you're truly looking at, like you said, a dual threat quarterback. But I wanted to add context to that for our listeners. Like, this is a guy in this game. I say you probably have to try to run the football, because you, like, from a schematic standpoint, you need that extra head, right? Like you need that running back to turn into a blocker, to where now your quarterback just has one guy, right? And you need that, especially we'll get into the defensive prospects in this defensive line that Oregon has from that perspective. So that I wanted to just highlight that part of it and probably give like a little comp for him. Do you think he kind of fell in the Snoop Huntley range of a quarterback? I feel like they're probably similar height, right? Like probably right around 6 foot, 6'1", and just can move a little bit, throw the football a little bit. But just for our listeners who haven't watched him, I don't foresee him being a guy that I think NFL teams pursue him as their main backup quarterback, right?
Right.
But he'll probably be third string-ish. And I could see him
scout team quarterback against it when you got roster. You facing the running quarterback or quarterback with mobility. It's like, hey, we got a guy who could test our defense on the scout team during practice that week. That's a good call out, kid. And I think especially in the red zone, if JMU gets inside the 20, that's when it really gets dangerous with his legs, because you're trying to drop back in coverage. You try to make sure you blanket everything. And the moment you blink and don't keep your eye on him and don't have him accounted for, then he can run for 20, and now he just scored a touchdown on you. And he will lower the shoulder because he is a densely built quarterback. He's gonna be willing to take some punishment and give some to try and get his team into the end zone. So definitely, like I said, Oregon, like, your offense needs to score. do not allow them to hang around. That's the key to this game for them, which we'll get into key matchups and stuff like that, because I really want to highlight some stuff on defense for JMU that I saw on film watching them against Louisville and some other teams this year. But yeah, definitely these are the offensive prospects to watch. Maybe, keep an eye on Evan Stewart. Maybe we see he's been practicing this week. Again, maybe he does play and suit up and they get him going, because remember he had the injury in the offseason. He was supposed to miss the entire regular season game, and now he's practicing. So just keep an eye out if you see. I think is he number one? Or is that I think the Kenyon Moore has number one.
Mm-hmm.
So just look out for Evan Stewart if he gets 7. In the field. Yeah, I think it's 7. Because that's a guy that was supposed to be one of the top receivers in this class if he had not gotten hurt.
He's number 7, DP. He's
number 7. Okay.
All right, let's do this, DP. We talked offensive prospects to watch. Let's flip sides of the football, man. Talk defensive prospects to watch from this JMU versus Oregon playoff matchup this upcoming weekend.
This episode is brought to you by Prospects. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. Bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is Prospects. Prospects is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. Prospects has added an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. Download the Prospects app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prospects, it's good to be right. Defensive prospects to watch, Keith. I was watching JMU's defense, watching film on them the other night and last night just to prepare for the pod. Elijah Culp, the corner for JMU, number 2. When I watched him against our boy Chris Bell Jr., that was a physical and feisty matchup between 2 talented players. And a lot of people, because he plays at JMU, they don't know who Elijah Culp is. Against Chris Bell in that game, he was targeted, I think, 3 or 4 times. He allowed 1 reception in coverage for like 7 yards. He blanketed him on the I think it was kind of a go route or a corner route, which, for those watching on YouTube, you'll see the picture. Physical, 2-handed jamming. And typically for a guy, he's listed at 5'10", like 185, 188 or whatever. I think his frame is well filled out, Keith. When I was watching him against Chris Bell, I'm like, Chris Bell's like 6'1", 6'2", 220. I don't know if I want a guy sub 190 jamming them like that, right? I don't know if that was I didn't think coming into it, I was like, I don't know if this is a good idea, but it actually worked out for Elijah Culp more times than it didn't. So this is a guy, I think, in this game against the Kenyon Moore, Gary Bryant Jr., you went up against one of the best and most impactful receivers in college football earlier this season when he was healthy, Chris Bell Jr., and you played a really good game against him. And also, this is a dude who runs the alley. He's an extra hat in the run defense. He's not afraid to tackle and get physical. He'll, go down in the box. They do show a lot of simulated pressures, which I'll talk about in the next topic. Definitely watch out for number 2 for JMU, because if there's a guy who can make himself a ton of money in this game, if he plays well against this receiving core, it's Elijah Culp. He can play instinctive, good zone corner, but he's willing to get up at the line of scrimmage and mix it up.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you this question for our listeners, right, because they hear you talking highly about him. That matchup against Chris Bell sounds like you're saying it was more good Elijah Culp than bad Chris Bell. Is that what you...
Yeah, I mean, he definitely won. Like, Chris Bell got him a couple times. He didn't get the ball on the times he got him, but for the most part, it was pretty even matchup. And when you're going into that game, you're thinking, when I went into that film study, I'm like, he played Chris Bell. Let me see what Chris Bell did. And then I'm like watching the tape, and I'm like, man, this Elijah Culp dude is he's hooping out here. Like, he's balling. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it was a lot of good Elijah Bell. Wasn't so much bad Chris. I mean, it was good Elijah Culp, not bad Chris Bell. He just really stood out in that game. And I think going up against a guy that physical, that powerful, that fast, and now you facing guys like at the Kenyon Moore, who's a straight line speed, elite speed threat. this could be a game where he can make himself some more money.
Yeah, yep. Okay, DP. I'm gonna go ahead switch to Oregon, right? And I'm gonna go with the name, right? The name we've been talking about that has been placed as a top 10 pick early on in the season, and I think it has slowly dropped for this young man, right? And that's Mateo Uigalele. And what I want to see from him, one, is being dominant in the run game, right? But when I look at his statistics, DP, he has 5 sacks on the season, and he has 1 sack in the last 7 weeks. 7 weeks, 1 sack in the last 7 weeks. So I'm looking for him to come out and show some prowess, right? Like show to be physically dominant. Like you're going against what you should be the superior talent. There shouldn't be an offensive lineman. If you're a first rounder and you're going against a group of 5 school, there shouldn't be an offensive lineman that can block you, right? Whether that's running the football, whether they're running the football or whether they're throwing the football. So I'm looking for you to get on the charts. And the reason I'm saying that, because DP, is that evaluating Mateo, he's a guy that falls into that category of where I say good athlete, not great athlete, but I question if the athleticism is high enough for them to be a consistent threat around the edge, right? And there's a bucket of guys that's like that every single year, where they're pretty good off the edge, but I don't know if you're dynamic and dominant enough to be a consistent threat off of the edge. And if I can't count on sack production, right, especially with you as an edge rusher, then where does that place you as far as scheme? What does that place you as far as what round you get drafted in? Things like that. And I think of some, and we've mentioned this before, some tweeners that have entered the draft, and I think we've mentioned these 2 names before. But I was about to say Mateo Uigalele, AJ Epinesa, and the guy Yator. That's what I was about to. Yator, right? Both of those guys, and both of those guys have had the same issue where they, certain coaches have tried to put weight on them, right, and kick them inside, and then certain coaches have tried to take weight off them, right, because it's very difficult when you kind of have that that profile of where it's good, not great, and then you have good size, but I don't know where to play you. So I'm looking at Mateo Uigalele definitely.
Yeah, I mean, and then also, like you said, just from a pass rusher standpoint, when you're facing guys like an Alonza Barnett III, who is a dual threat quarterback, like you got to be disciplined in your rush lane. You can't be out here trying to be a bull. Like you can't, again, like look down at the opponent and be like, well, I'm just going to manhandle this tackle and force my way in the backfield, because then you giving an outlet, or you're allowing, you opening the back door for Alonza to get out, create a scramble drill. And we know that anytime a scramble drill happens, anything is possible to happen, right? So you don't want to create those wacky plays that, hey, it's all about how the ball bounces or how the ball rolls. Does it roll in your favor and your defense makes a play? Or do you get a guy breaking free open down the field and he makes a running throw and it's a 50-yard bomb for a touchdown? You don't want to be the one that created that, the reason that play started. You want to be able to keep him in the pocket. He's 6 foot even. So you know that there's going to be some visual issues finding throwing lanes with Bear Alexander, Amari Washington on the defensive line. I think Bear Alexander's going back to school. Amari Washington might be coming out for the draft. Amari Washington's another guy. Like, I think this is the guy who can wreck this entire game for JMU on the interior, because how quick he is, but also how powerful he plays with strong, heavy hands. Be able to compress some angles, get in the backfield, just get your hands up and create really bad throwing visuals for a short quarterback. But Mateo he has to play discipline and make sure he doesn't get out of his path too often. Keith, I'm gonna go back to JMU real quick. There's a nickel corner, and I'm surprised that Kurt Signetti didn't snatch this kid up. DJ Barksdale, 5'9", 181 pounds, also in that game against Louisville when I was watching the tape. He had a route against Chris Bell. He was playing off coverage. Off coverage, outside leverage. They ran like a post, and good hips. He flipped, turn, and then you see him just trigger and win and attack the ball right over the top of he was up there. Little young man can leap. He can go up there. You know what I mean? At 5'9", shout out to him. But he battled the catch point with Chris Bell. Knocked the ball free, raked at the hands. He wasn't Moss. You would think Miller Moss probably thought, I throw this up to my 6'2", 220 guy. He's gonna go make the play. Yeah. But no, DJ Barksdale came in and raked through the hands and knocked the ball free, man, and made it a very difficult catch and ended up being an incompletion or a pass breakup. And he was just kind of all over the receivers in that game when he played man, zone. They do different things. Even with Elijah Culp, those guys will sit flat-footed and read. Like Culp almost had a pick six in that game, playing off coverage, flat foot read, broke downhill on the quick hitch route, and he just didn't catch the ball. If he caught it and stayed upright, that was a house call. So these guys are opportunistic and they're very disciplined in their reads. And I'll tell you one thing, Chesney, who I think is going to be the head coach, I think, of UCLA after the CFP, he definitely instilled a culture there, because that defense, which I'll get into in just a little bit, those guys play with their hair on fire. All 11 guys play to the football, and that's what's going to make this a very interesting situation on Saturday.
I like that. I like that. DP, we talked offensive prospects. We talked defensive prospects. Now it's time to combine the two, DP. We talking matchups, right? With wide receivers versus defensive backs, which offensive lineman versus defensive lineman. Ultimately, we're going to figure out how we're going to win this game, and we're doing it through the lens of these 2026 NFL draft prospects. Talk about that coming up next.
Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday. Shot for being our everydayers, and thank you for being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network in America, all because of you, our everydayers. Key matchups that could decide this game. Keith, one of the things I really appreciated when watching this JMU defense is the amount of simulated pressure. They will line up, and it's not just against the pass, it's also against the run. They force the offensive line to communicate. They'll show different guys at the line of scrimmage, simulated looks, mugged up the A gaps. Then they'll walk a safety down to replace a linebacker. You think the 5 or 6 guys at the line of scrimmage are all blitzing, but they're not. They drop off the linebackers and still rush to safety, and they got a free runner because nobody knows who's actually triggering when the ball is snapped. They do that. They did that so much defensively. This offensive line from Oregon is going to have to communicate. Isaiah World hasn't played great this year. He's actually been a little bit of a disappointment just in how he's played, knowing how talented he actually is. He's still raw. So that's a guy that I would absolutely send pressure towards. Make him and Pregnon and Lalalu, Luli and Harkey, make those guys communicate, because then also you get Culp. They have Culp line up on press man, and off that simulated look, they'll blitz him and then drop off the edge rusher. You get fire zone stuff. You get man blitzes. They are going to show different looks to this offensive line, and these guys are going to have to be prepared. That's one of them situations where, like I think Kurt would always say, when you see pressure, have an answer for pressure. Know where your hearts are, stuff like that. This is a defense that will stress that with the Dante Moore and this front 5 of Oregon's offensive line. Yeah, you're going to have, even against the run game, they get guys free to the football. They know how to scheme it up. I love what they do defensively. It's a very fun defense to watch, and they'll play coverage very well in the back end on that.
Yeah, I'm going to go with DP. This Oregon offensive line, you just highlighted them, right? You talked about one prospect, Isaiah World, the guy who's probably played better this year, right? And people are kind of more excited about at this very moment. Alex Harkey, right? The other offensive tackle that was also a transfer, right? That transferred in also. I'm looking at this situation, DP, and I'm bringing in elements, right? As far as first round of the playoffs. You go back to last year, y'all played Ohio State, first round of the playoffs. You're the #1 overall team. Ohio State, I don't know, beat them by 20, 30, 40, or 50, right? It was not a great performance. And it was, everybody believed that was the year, right? This was the year Oregon by far had the best team. They had one of the best wins. They beat Ohio State earlier in the season, right? So to get blown out, that was a disappointment. So we've seen this narrative in this story before, DP, where coaches, the one like wanting to get off to a good start, but a good start means a safe start, right? So I'm thinking that they're probably going to want to run the football, talking about the Oregon Ducks. So I'm looking at this offensive line, right? Y'all have to create those lanes to where, you know what, we can run the football going 1st and 10. We can run a football, put us ahead of the chains, is easily 2nd and 3, right? Then we could get into some play action stuff. We could get into some dump off stuff. We could get into some bootlegs and things like that with Dante Moore. We could get into some things where Kenyon Sadiq is leaking. You know, after we do a hard sell play action, he's just kind of into the flats and you could dump the football off. So I'm thinking about that, DP. And I think that this offensive line is going to be key because I don't believe Dan Lanning walks into this game and wants to throw the football for 400 yards all over the football field initially. I don't think that's what his game plan is, because throwing the football, that becomes, like you said, right, when you kind of put the game in a question mark, right? Because all type of weird things happen, tipped passes, overthrows. You know, you have the opportunity for JMU to rush the quarterback, right? They can send blitzes. You just talked about the simulated pressures. So things can get they can get different. They can get a little weird sometimes passing the football, especially in a game like this where you have all the pressure on you because JMU is not supposed to be there, right? Like that's the conversation, is that, oh, watch this, Oregon should beat them by 40, right? That there's no amount of points that you can beat JMU by that people are going to say they're surprised that happened, right? As far as like you can't dominate them enough. And that's a very weird position to be in. And I've been in those meetings, right? When you're putting the game plan together and you're like, honestly, we just want to walk out here with the W and move on, right? Like, because you just don't want to be the upset. And it's a lot of pressure in that situation.
You don't want Cinderella to find her glass shoe. Like you don't want Cinderella to find that glass shoe and go back to the dance. Keith, I'll say one other matchup. I talked about it, right? That defensive line for Oregon, physically, they should overwhelm this offensive line from JMU, right? So typically for me, Keith, offensively, I'm not trying to run a bunch of inside zone and power plays running at them. That's going to be the strength of their D-line. I want to get Wayne Knight. Wayne Knight is a 5'7", 190-pound running back for JMU. He's rushed over 1,200 yards this season, 9 rushing touchdowns. He only has a fumble on 189 carries. Matter of fact, he only has a fumble in his career on 274 carries. So even though he's a smaller back, he protects the ball. I want to see JMU get some wide zone, some stretch stuff, get some off tackle, get on the perimeter, force these defensive linemen. Like if you try to run at them, their key is strike vertically, displace, tackle. But when you have to force them to move, they got to stay coordinated. They got to move laterally while trying to strike and push back and reset the line of scrimmage. It's a lot. You make it a multitask. That's what I want to make them do in this situation. Because now if somebody gets out of their rush path or gets pushed a little bit off the ball, that's going to give Wayne Knight, my running back, a lane to cut up. Or if you're playing too tight and we can seal the edge, now he can get out there. And he's a quick guy with good contact balance because he's got that little center of gravity. I want to see how JMU handles, how they try to run the ball and find balance. Because, yes, Alonza Barnett's going to run it. He can't be the only one that's running the football to be effective. They got to get their top running back, Wayne Knight, going.
I like that, DP. I think this thing is full of interesting matchups, right? And while we predict it to be a blowout, there can be some different things, different dynamics, especially some of these draft prospects that can make a difference. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us each and every single day. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Coming up on tomorrow's show, guys, we are previewing Tulane versus Ole Miss. This was a game that Tulane lost by, I think, 5 or 6 touchdowns the first time, but they believe they belong in the dance, and they're looking to rectify that loss. We're talking about the players to watch in that matchup as well. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.